My name is Doug Kaufmann. For the past 40 years, I've dedicated my life and even my career to finding the root cause of disease. Join me in a team of physicians, pharmacists, and scientists, and soon you too will know the cause. What is a 62-year-old medical textbook that's all beat up? You can see I've read this a few times. What does it say about cancer in the future? Okay, we'll discuss this today. A friend of mine named Daniel, a young man who's married to Lindsay, and they have 3 beautiful little boys. Lindsay's mom, his wife's mother, died at 37 years old when Lindsay was 3 years old. Lindsay is now 37 years old. And you're going to learn today in a 9-minute interview I have with Daniel, they were biting their nails worrying that his wife was going to die of the same disease at the same time. I think very often in cancer care, we need to be sensitive that only 5, maybe 10% of all cancers are genetic. That leaves 95% that aren't. Also today, I want to talk to you about lumps, bumps, and sores. I think so often we're diagnosing lumps, bumps, and sores very quickly as cancer. Are mistakes being made? I'm not here to tell you you don't have cancer. I'm here to tell you that there are some similarities shared by sacs of fungus and cancer tumors. Let's start by opening the book on this lumps, bumps, and sores. I'll never forget, there's an excellent book I have here on the counter. I've had it here for years and years and years. And in this book, one of the chapters, fungus causing mass lesions, sores, in the central nervous system. This is a very respected medical book, Principles and Practice of Clinical Mycology. Many oncology departments, many universities all over the globe contribute to this book. And here it says, fungus causes sores inside our body. We have sores that won't heal in America or any country, and the doctors say, wow, keep an eye on that. That could be cancer. Yet fungus causes sores inside our body. So let's take a look at what I put together today. Cancer makes bumps, lumps, and sores, as do other things. If we don't know the cause of our lumps, bumps, and sores, they're often diagnosed as cancer. Maybe they are, but maybe not. Let's study that in a little more detail. I find this whole field fascinating, folks, in that based on my knowledge, fungi are old organisms. Look at Leviticus 14:32. Fungi are old organisms. As such, they have outsmarted us and our doctors. Fungi hide from our white blood cells that devour stuff, bacteria, fungi, artifacts in our body. We have white blood cells that God put in there that are dynamic, that just gobble up anything. They have powerful digestive enzymes. They consume it and it's gone. But fungi have outsmarted our immune system. They hide themselves in a little rubbery sac where they can reproduce and get bigger and bigger and bigger through the months, right? Just like some of us get in the shower in the morning, we're washing under our arm, we say, oh, ow, I didn't know I had a lump under there. Now, if you're the typical male, you say, no big deal. A woman would run to a doctor right away. But 2 months later, the man's in the shower, ooh, it's getting bigger. So a cancer tumor grows anaerobically without oxygen. It can just begin growing. So do these sacs of fungi. Okay, so let's look at the graphic, next graphic. Fungus makes lumps. They're called ascomycetes or mycetomas. The world's largest grouping of fungi are ascomycetes. Mycetomas are lumps that form after exposure to certain molds. And then look at this. Neglected Tropical Diseases in 2014 said this: many mycetomas can resemble cancers, such as sarcomas. And folks, I've got to tell you, that's the last of it. It's published, swept under the rug, and nobody does any work on it. You know why? They just didn't learn this in medical training. Mycetoma, they would think, well, that's something in, like the magazine says, some tropical setting. So a few people are exposed to it. I think that's wrong. I think we're commonly exposed to these molds, and it's creating lumps in us and what we call mycotomas or ascomycete, sac fungi, right? And these sac fungi, I think, look very much like cancer to a diagnostic specialist, okay? Fungus makes sores, and that's what I was just pointing out. In his 1996 medical textbook entitled Principles and Practice of Clinical Mycology, author C.C. Kibler points out that fungi cause mass lesions of the human central nervous system. Isn't this fascinating? I mean, I think, folks, our doctors are good. Your doctor is good. What they want to do is diagnose something before it becomes a calamity. So early cancer diagnosis is a good idea, unless it isn't cancer. Early lump diagnosis is a good idea. All I'm asking doctors to do today is while you put a needle into the lump to get a biopsy, send some of the biopsy off to have it tested for fungus. And send the rest off to your cancer lab and have it tested for cancer. I think very often, from what I'm hearing from many doctors that I work with now, I'm hearing that there are fungi present in tumors. What the traditional doctor says is, well, that's because there was a break in the specimen and fungus grew on it. No, I think it was there all along. As a matter of fact, some lumps diagnosed as cancer, we now know, are fungus. This is well documented in the scientific literature. The question is yours? And the way to find out is to tell your doctor, go ahead and send a piece of that biopsy off to cancer, but I want it tested for fungi, okay? We'll handle that in future shows. You see, cancer isn't always cancer, and that's what I want to talk with you about today. In this book, 1957, Clinical and Immunologic Aspects of Fungal Diseases, a medical textbook at Johns Hopkins University. You know, I've had a bad cough, says a patient. On page 11 in this book, pulmonary coccidioidiomycosis is suggestive of metastatic malignancy. You've got to be kidding me. So many people at this time of the year, the flu's going around, so many people were running to the doctor and saying, this cough just doesn't go away. Cancer, so many doctors believe. But here's a fungus that's in the soil that when the wind blows, we inhale it, and it can cause a persistent cough, and it can mimic cancer. Just make sure the doctor is testing for fungus. Cancer isn't always cancer. You know, I have a sore that just won't heal. Localized cutaneous, here's a different fungus, blastomycosis, is frequently mistaken for squamous cell carcinoma. I wonder how many patients have had basal or squamous cell carcinomas cut off their body and had no idea that 60 plus years ago, a Johns Hopkins medical textbook said, that's probably fungus. Frequently mistaken, frequently. That means 50% plus. Here it is 62 years later. I can assure you, having worked with skin doctors and cancer doctors, they don't know this. But there's more. I think I may have cancer. Page 153 says here's histoplasmosis, a different fungus. Disseminated, that means bloodstream histoplasmosis, is found to coexist with leukemia, lymphosarcoma, sarcoidosis, and Hodgkin's disease much more frequently than is statistically justifiable just based on coincidence. And then finally, page 175, what's this growth on my leg? Disseminated cryptococcus, a different fungus, closely simulates neoplasm. Folks, the truth is in old medical textbooks. Along came a whole field of medicine called oncology, and they didn't learn from this book. They learned from what others had seen in the operating rooms, in the emergency rooms, and so forth. That lumps, bumps, and sores are forces to be reckoned with. Could they be due to fungus? You see, these old books say, yeah, they sure could. Now, let's meet Daniel when we get back from this break, and then I'll be back with you.
After having read the Fungus Link and the diabetes book, it's eye-opening. It's allowed me to, I guess, feel the joy and the happiness to practice again. A lot of times with my patients, they come into my office and they have questions in regards to various things, and I don't have good answers for them. They've tried various medications, they've tried antibiotics and other things. After having read these books and after having spoken with Doug, I feel like there's hope again. I feel like, you know, maybe there's a way for me to now help people that before would have been, you know, basically hopeless. I have to prescribe the medications, the antifungals, the diflucan, the nystatin, and get them on these diets because it only makes sense. It's logical to me at this point. I feel like if I were to withhold that information from those people, I would not be, you know, upholding my oath.
Some of you already know Daniel Crouch. Daniel and Lindsay Crouch started the little company that could 7-8 years ago. It's called Guiltless Goodies, and we'll tell you why it's called guiltlessgoodies.com in a little bit. But Daniel is not only a chef, his wife is a chef. She used to do our cooking segments on Know the Cause. He's a certified
personal trainer.
Trainer, and he takes great care of himself. They got together many years ago, and they have 3 of the most darling little boys. The second best looking, you know, family in the world. My family, of course, my grandkids being first. But you were talking about teaching others what you have learned. We almost owe a fiduciary obligation, Daniel, when we know what we've learned. Lindsay tells the story and it makes you cry. She was 3 years old. She was your kid's age when Mom died. And so you're now teaching that don't be fearful when she turned 36, 37 years old, which is when her mom died. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it really was on this set. The first time we came down and we had discussed our stories, and you basically said, listen guys, I'm going to go ahead and let you know a truth here is that cancer is not the end for you, and you will not go that way. And of course, our hearts jumped. We've been waiting for this, a young couple, knowing this is a potential, you know, disaster waiting to happen. And when you explained to us what cancer is and how to control it, how to eliminate it, knowing the cause, it set us free. I mean, literally, our emotional lives were set free because that was one thing we didn't have to worry about. And it reconciled us with God, I believe, because we'd always loved the Lord very much, but it's difficult to sort of go all in when you're, you know, my wife's mom, is it going to happen to her? There's just this ambiguity, and that's gone now, and we're able to live bold and courageous lives, you know, life to the full, as Jesus said.
Yeah, and he also said, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And I think in medicine, this is what I'm teaching now on God TV, like I have in the US for 20 years on other networks, that we hold the key to our health in our front pocket. Few of us use it because when we have bad health, we go to a third party, second or third party, who really doesn't know us, and they look at us as a set of symptoms, and then they medicate those symptoms. You're now teaching at church how to kind of liberate yourself using some of the knowledge you learned here. Teach us about that.
Well, and if you combine the science from Know the Cause and the perspective from the Bible and you put them together, it just makes sense. You've told me before how many times in the Old Testament God said, beware of yeast. Right. And if you look at the schedule of the tribe of Israel, where they have a fasting schedule and a celebratory schedule. And that fasting schedule is, as you pointed out to us, is to starve out the yeast. And if you look at the Bible heroes of old, they all adhered to a specific diet. They all you know, were good observant Jews. And so, you know, they're going to go ahead and follow the fasting schedules. If you look at Moses, died at 120 years old, had not need for glasses or a cane. He was strong.
Climbs the mountain.
Climbs the mountain. Caleb. Yeah. The same thing. Samson, all of them ate a certain way, and they honored the principles that God put forward for us, and then therefore they were rewarded for it and were of immense strength and power.
So when you're teaching this group at church, because I remember that day I talked to you two about, please don't be worried. I know your mom died at 37, but that doesn't mean you have to die. Folks, there is such a difference between genetics, the hand that our parents dealt us, and epigenetics. Liberating your fears, because exercise, proper diet, prayer, etc., all play a role in changing the DNA. I mean, it's so exciting what we're doing. When you talk to this group now at church, do they, I wish I was a fly on your shoulder and could watch you go, you mean antibiotics, alcohol, grains? Why, taking away grains is like taking away mom's apple pie, and in fact, it is. What do they do?
I think that there's a revelation that they experience that maybe God is for me actually, and maybe if there is knowledge that can help me to live an ideal, wonderful life, and so it's inspiring to see just the shackles come off, the bondage come off for a lot of folks.
Yeah. Do they approach you afterwards and say, "Wait a minute, can I take you to lunch? You know, can I take you out for a beer?"
To which I say, well, we don't have to have the beer, but nonetheless, they
Yeah.
do. They're hungry for it. I mean, how many people, in the church right now are, like I said, in bondage? And really, if we're going to go out and be a full force and show, the world that the Holy Spirit is alive and electric, can we do it if we're downtrodden and sick and depressed? No one wants to be like that. We have to be the example, be the ambassadors, and show the miracles. And so I think it's, to your point, we have a fiduciary responsibility to share the gospel, the good news, so that we can live longer, do more, and inspire more people.
It's so fascinating, Daniel, because with this knowledge, what you two did, before I met you actually, you had already decided grain like sugar and corn and wheat and barley and so forth wasn't going to be part of their dietary regimen because it made them sick. They found out after years of looking at this, what is making me sick? Turns out grains convert to sugar when you eat them. Sugar was making them sick. And so they substituted, whereas everyone else said, okay, I'm off grain, either the gluten diet or one diet or another, I'm off grain. They said, we kind of like pancakes, but we can't make it without grain. And lo and behold, along comes this brilliant woman who said, oh yeah, you can.
She had the miracle from above, and so she, prayed for a resolution for me, because I was up and down, and I would cheat, and I would go back, and it'd have disastrous effects on our relationship.
So you'd eat pasta or something,
pancakes and pizza. Friday we'd make it through the week great, and Friday night we'd celebrate. Saturday morning we would be, in just in bed lamenting what we had done, and then wondering if there was a better way. And so she came up with a solution for people who maybe aren't so hardcore, but want to be middle of the road.
Yeah.
And so it's really not, a baked good. It's really just what God provided for us in its most, infinitesimal stage, the seed, the child of the plant.
You now have a 7-seed flour, and you have so many other products. You've even veered from the Kaufmann diet using a little bit of coconut sugar in some of your products. And I've always thought, Daniel, there's the people who follow, January 1st, okay, this year I'm going to lose 30 pounds. They're over here. Then you have a middle of the road. Then you have people who push the child down the aisle in a food store and pull out. You can't pronounce what's in cereal or cookies anymore. And they don't mind if their child eats that way. I thought this was a brilliant move, Lindsay and you had, to make a product that is so clean with no GMOs, no chemicals, no emulsifiers, just no corn, the things we talk about on this show, and as a donut, for children, or as a little cookie for children. I think that's a great idea, because most mommies and daddies go to the store and the kid just loads in cookies and donuts, and those aren't sustaining foods. You can't, maybe you can have a donut, but the next day you think, okay, I can have another one of those donuts. It just doesn't work that way. That was a brilliant approach. Now you're doing more Kaufmann friendly, and you're kind of in the middle of the road. Tell people about the seeds and what you do with them.
Absolutely. So for folks who get it and who are really, going to go all in right now and really change your life and see the best that you have before you, we have a super seed smoothie mix, and you just put it in your smoothie. And of course, we've got so many recipes on your site to show you how to do it, and they taste amazing. And they're filling. I mean, who doesn't need more fiber in their day? I don't know who doesn't. So to be able to get it quickly, efficiently, and to have it taste good, when. And then, to your point earlier, we wanted to find folks who maybe were on the cusp who, maybe it's okay if there's a little organic coconut palm sugar in there. So, like our kids, for instance, they don't complain. But you know what? It's better than a lot of the junk out there, the cereals and the goldfish. So we know when they're eating it, they're getting, a mycotoxin-free environment, for the most part. And they're getting that good fat, fiber, and protein, and they're getting value from it. It's not just an empty calorie,
Yeah.
So we feel good as parents giving our children something that's going to bless their brains.
Daniel is a good friend of my son, Evan. Their wives get along. They have 5 kids collectively. We have 2 grandkids and they have 3 children. And so they get together and have a lot of fun. What they did, folks, is really fascinating. Where they went from this horrible feeling, uh-oh, am I going to die of disease because I'm now where mom was? They've turned this into a business. It's called Guiltless. Isn't that a great name? Guiltlessgoodies.com is their website. Move around, look and see what they've done. Be creative when you do. And consider the stories coming out of the young people today. This is why I wanted Daniel to sit down and just tell you, I was there. I'm now here because I changed. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming
Doug.
out today. You bet.
Well, it used to be called GERD and then acid indigestion. I don't know what it's called now, but a lot of these tummy trouble questions that we get, hopefully we can help you with. Number one for acid indigestion, I like aloe vera gel. Aloe vera gel is very, very soothing. It's different than the juice. It tastes kind of funny, but I think you'll find that it's worth it. It's very soothing right out of the gate. Number two, apple cider vinegar. We were just talking earlier about how apple cider vinegar tends to just relieve that stomach that is always acidic and always miserable. You'll like this one a lot. Number three, you will never have guessed this one, hydrochloric acid, or HCl, also called betaine. HCl is something that sometimes we're running low on and we need a little bit more of it, but only take that with a meal.
He is such a dear man, and his wife is just amazing. His wife, Lindsay, used to do our cooking over in the kitchen here at Know the Cause, and such a great couple. My wife and I would sit with one of their little boys named Henry, great little guy, and this was maybe a couple of years ago. But they have started a business that is using, instead of any grains, which are, commonly exposed to these mycotoxins, they're using seeds for breads and so forth. I love that couple. Now, wasn't it fascinating when he was talking about the fear that they lived in, and so many people do? I think one of the things this show has the potential of doing is liberating people's fears. We're so worried if Uncle Bill had cancer that we're going to have cancer. And folks, there's a lifestyle. I'm an old guy, and this is the year I turned 70. There's a lifestyle I enjoy. I work out on a regular basis. I eat differently. No cigarettes, no alcohol, anything. It's a lifestyle that has enabled me, even though my parents are dead, it's enabled me to live healthy in my old age thus far. Understand fungus. The second you understand what fungus can do to you, you are liberated. But can fungus mimic or cause cancer? About 4 or 5 years ago, a couple of doctors and I published this paper. It was a research paper that was in Oncology News, and it's tiny, I know, but the headline there is Fungi and Their Mycotoxins, an Underappreciated Role in Cancers. It was in a great cancer journal, and it really opened the eyes of so many doctors and so many people who read that journal. Because the word fungus and cancer are rarely, doctors put cancer patients on antifungal medications because their therapies, chemo and radiation, hurt the immune system. With the immune system down, they fall vulnerable to fungal or bacterial growth, right? So they put the patients often on antibiotics and often on antifungals to prevent infections from taking hold. But the doctors don't know that many of these patients actually checked into the hospital, went to see the doctor because of a lump in their body, and were told they had cancer when sometimes they don't. Might be rare, but sometimes they don't. My point is, just make sure you rule out something that is easily treatable. A fungal infection isn't really causing that lump, bump, or sore in your body. Okay, now, why the right diet and supplements work so well for cancer patients. Number one, vitamins and minerals are antifungal. Psyllium fiber is antifungal. Amino acids like L-tryptophan, L-tyrosine, etc. are antifungal. Fatty acids like omega-3 fatty acids and other fatty acids kill fungus. Fresh vegetables and fruits are antifungal. Coconut is antifungal. Do you see where I'm going with all of this? Choose to eat food that has antimicrobial properties. You can also choose to eat food that contribute to fungus. We've talked about peanuts and wheat and corn and so forth, or foods that feed those. These are carbohydrates, starches, potatoes, rice, feed these fungi once they're on board. The right diet and supplements work so well for cancer patients. Did you know that oregano and clove and so many spices are antifungal? Zinc kills both fungus and their mycotoxins. Garlic kills both fungus and their mycotoxins. Citrus oil, like D-limonene in orange, are both antifungal and antimycotoxin. Probiotics have antifungal properties. As a matter of fact, the last line there, phenolic compounds in plants are antifungal. I was asked to present to a group of oncology doctors one time. One year I presented on cancer and fungus, being so similar, like I'm presenting to you. The next year they wanted me back, but I couldn't present the same lecture again. And so I turned the lecture into, what is it in our phyto, means plant, phytonutrition. What is it in a plant that lends to its ability to resist fungus when it's growing up from the ground and then become antifungal for us when we eat it? Folks, when a farmer plants 10 seeds, 8 of them will grow, 8 or 9 of them. 1 or 2 of them get devoured by bacteria or fungus in the soil. This is just the way it goes. There's a loss anytime you plant seeds. But those who resist the fungal and the bacterial assault on them grow up through the soil, hit the sunlight, and boom, all of a sudden they're growing, they're flourishing. And their leaves and the green part of the plant has something called phytonutrients, right? It's this phenolic compounds, P-H-E-O-N-O-L, phenol, phenolic compounds. These are potent little medications for the leaves, for the plant to begin growing and to resist plant diseases. So by the time it's harvested, this spinach that grew out in the field, it's harvested and we steam it and then we eat it on our salad or we eat it with our dinner. We are also getting tiny plant amounts of these phenolic compounds, these little tiny bits of fungus, or of antifungal. And that is because we're continuing to eat little bits of fungus, so offset it. You know, God made no mistakes. As I study mycology, the fungus, and bacteriology of bacteria, I realize how intricately our bodies are made. How if we get into a lot of mold, He put plants here. I give you every plant with seed in it of like kind. Look at Genesis. There are medicines, biblical medicines, to remedy the damage we've done by falling off of the diet, by consuming things like alcohol and things like corn that through the years, through the decades, through the centuries are pretty much commonly as a feed for our cattle and pigs and goats and so forth. These foods are impregnated with these molds. Then we so often eat the animal and wonder why we're sick. Medical science doesn't know much about this. They're beginning to learn, but currently they don't know much about it. Hence, I hope I'm bringing you advanced information that 20, 30 years from now, when I'm gone home, you'll be able to say, that's right, there was a guy a long time ago that talked about that right here on God TV. May God continue to bless each and every one of you and let the learning continue. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.